The Badgers have already made a couple moves. New running backs coach coming in. What do we like? What are we a little wary about? And a new receiver commit in that 2026 class. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Thank you for being patient with this. This was supposed to start a few minutes ago, but we had technical difficulties. I'm hoping my computer is good now. We'll see if this makes it through. We are talking about a new commit at the receiver spot in the 2026 class as Jayden Everett flips a pretty interesting body from Iowa State. But first, let's talk running backs coach. It is kind of an interesting hire, and it surprised me. We had a show earlier, I think today, and someone asked if I expected them to hire a running backs coach before the portal opened, and I didn't think so, only because the history of hiring positional coaches at Wisconsin, it's always taken a while. There's been the 30-day, you have to post a job and wait for it to fill and give people an opportunity to apply. I don't know if that's a thing anymore. It didn't seem to impact this. And I don't know if that was ever officially a thing, but it always seemed like Wisconsin, it would take a while to hire positional coaches. So I was surprised it got done as quick as it did. The running backs coach is interesting. You're bringing in Jayden Everett from Minnesota last year. He's only there for a year. There's some pros and cons there on the surface. It's not like I know who Jayden Everett is. I don't break bread with the guy. I can't tell you exactly what kind of running backs coach he is. The good, he is very touted as a running backs coach, as a recruiter in the running back room. He's been at a lot of different places. You're talking about a coach who has spent time at Michigan, Vanderbilt. He spent time at Minnesota last year, South Alabama. He's been a lot of different places in a lot of different conferences. He's coached at some real big-time places. Again, Michigan a couple years ago, where he helped work with Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings. Both of them had really good years. Vanderbilt the year before, where he worked with Cedric Alexander, who was the SEC all-freshman running back. That was their first all-freshman running back since Warren Norman a long time ago. So he's had success in multiple places. The Minnesota Gophers ground game last year was not exactly top tier, but they had injuries. They also had some offensive line issues. A lot of the same things we dealt with. Darius Taylor got hurt. But again, if you're bringing in Jayden Everett, you're looking at a guy who comes in with a very strong reputation as a recruiter. That's something when he was at Vanderbilt, they specifically talked about him as one of the rising stars in the industry. He was a linebacker in college, so he did play, but not running back. But he's been a running back coach a lot of places, moved around a lot. I think for me, that's one of the concerns is you don't want people who get stagnant. You don't want people who stay in the same spot forever. But I think he's been at 7 or 8 spots in the last 9-ish years, 8, 9 years. He's moved around a lot. And that can mean a couple things. It can mean he's climbing the ladder. He's moving but he's also gone from Michigan to Minnesota to Wisconsin. So I don't know. I do know, talking to some folks on the Minnesota side, a couple people that I've had on the show and talked with on the show, they felt like he was a good coach. They were surprised to lose him. They didn't love losing to Wisconsin. From the couple people I've talked to, that's encouraging. Fans have a better feel on coaches than most other people do. And it does feel like from the Minnesota standpoint, this was a coach that they probably didn't expect to leave, and they liked the idea that he would stick around. So you're adding a younger guy. He's been around a lot. He's coached some really good running backs. He's had success in a lot of spots, although not a ton of success last year. And also a coach with a really strong recruiting reputation where if there's 2 or 3 places on the Badger staff, on a football staff in general, where I just want great recruiters, running back's one of them. Running back's one of them. I think corner's another one. I think receiver's another one. And I think Jayden Everett is a great recruiter. We're going to talk about a body he added. I think there's a couple spots where if the needle needs to lean one way or the other, ideally at every spot you have a great developer and a great recruiter, but that's just not realistic. These spots, you just need dudes at running back, in my opinion. Like, certainly you got to develop them too. Don't get me wrong, make no mistake, but you need dudes at running back. You need dudes at corner. You need dudes at receiver. This is a guy that comes in with a pretty good reputation as a recruiter. So that part of it's interesting to me. Then you look at the staff as a whole, new offensive line coach, new running back coach. it feels like there's a big emphasis on let's get this ground game fixed. Let's get the offensive line moving. This is a guy who has a history of playing in power styles. Again, Michigan, Minnesota. Feels like he understands what those type of running backs need to do. And again, a guy with a reputation as a running back recruiter. The Grogan says upgrade ? Feels like it. I think I don't know. I'm not sure it's a big upgrade, to be honest. I also think Spalding was a good recruiter. I in fact know he was. He was a good recruiter. So I think more experience. He's coached in more places. I think it's an upgrade. I think it's an upgrade over Spalding, but I don't think it's like you've blown the doors off and hired the best running back coach in America. He moves around a lot, which is fine as positional coaches. That's fine. But you would like to, on this staff specifically, you really need to start developing some continuity in places. There's been too many moving parts in Luke Fickell's staff. Not to say you can't hire Everett and he's here for several years. Maybe it works out great. Cannonell says, I don't know, maybe I like Spalding. I liked Spalding too. I thought Spalding was a good recruiter, and I think it's hard as a running backs coach to get a ton of success when your guys get banged up and the offense line isn't very good. But that being said, this is another coach coming in with a really strong reputation as a recruiter, and he has more experience coming in than Spalding did. I think coaching running backs at Michigan is a pretty big deal. That's one of those positions that they don't suffer fools, Michigan running backs coach, because of what they want to do there, because of Harbaugh and who he had in place. I think that's a pretty big deal. He has more experience. Badger Bournemouth calls it a lateral move. Zach Bart says Spalding had multiple cycles with no recruits and running backs. Definitely underachieved under Spalding. Not all on him, but didn't do him favors either. That's fair. You had that class that you brought in Dupree and Dylan Jones, who were both 4-star recruits, and then the next class you don't bring in anybody. To me, that was a whiff. I said at the time, you should never go a class at Wisconsin specifically. You should never go a class where you don't bring in a running back. That's like being the person buying groceries for the restaurant and just not getting eggs one day. You should always get eggs when you're getting groceries for the restaurant. You can maybe skip on, I don't know, scallions. Maybe you don't need, what's another ingredient? Cayenne peppers, but you can always get eggs. Just like Wisconsin, you should always get running backs in a cycle. Spalding did miss that one year. Byron Lewis was a big target of theirs, but it does feel like an upgrade. I think, long story short, I like it. I like taking somebody from Minnesota. I like adding some recruiting chops. He has more experience. It feels like an upgrade. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Yeah, and he was the lead recruiter on Estrada last year. It was a 4-star running back. Wisconsin was in on him as well. Really nifty back, agile. Maybe he can bring a guy like Estrada over to Wisconsin with him, who Wisconsin was definitely in on. We're going to take a second here. We're going to talk about a new receiver that's jumped into the 2026 class at a spot where, my goodness, do they need help? Could he play early? He's got an interesting body. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show. Quick second to say thank you for tuning into Locked On Badgers and what's going to be a probably busy couple days here. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. NBA season's already exciting. Friday's already exciting. Why not meld the two? Bring them together, the NBA season and Fridays over at FanDuel. FanDuel is making it all even better. Every Friday night before every game tips off, or before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. That become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. It's easy to check the weekly specials. There's boosts, bonuses, and surprises in that happy hour over on FanDuel. It's just a kind of a fun thing to do, right? Spicing it up, adding value, doing something different. That's what FanDuel's always been about, catering to the customer. It adds extra energy to a Friday night without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app, see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Fridays, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel. Today's episode also brought to you by our great friends over at Gametime. There is no better place to get those tickets than on Gametime. Whatever you're trying to get on, college basketball, NBA, NFL playoffs coming up, college football playoffs right now, the tailgates, packed stadiums, be there right there in the middle of all of it. The energy, the bands, there's nothing like it, and you can get there with Gametime. Gametime's awesome because once you open the app, you can see everything really easily, pictures of the seats before you sit down. There is no hidden fees. We get enough of that in life. There's no hidden fees, and tickets get emailed to you on your phone if you want it. It's so simple. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. That's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Let's talk a new player. And we're going to have to fire this cannon up a lot in the coming days. So we got it nice and oiled up. It's ready to go. We got a new kid in that 2026 class for the
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Let's talk Kash Brock. 6'2", 6'3", 175-pound receiver out of Chandler, Arizona. Previously committed to Iowa State. Offers from Iowa State, Arizona, Northwestern, among others. This is an interesting player when you go watch him on film. For starters, this room needs a ton of bodies. It needs a ton of help. And that help's going to have to come in the portal, but it's also going to have to come in the recruiting side, the high school side. There are freshmen that play. You can play. The receiver is one of those spots where if you have the right build, the right body type, the right mentality, if you enroll early, which Kash Brock is, this is a spot where you can play early. I think Zion LeGray has a chance at it just because of his build, another player in that 2026 class. I think Kash Brock is another guy potentially. 6'2", 6'3". I like the frame. I like the size. He's listed at 175, but he plays really physical. He's a guy because of what this roster doesn't have right now, could potentially play early. Mike says, I will take these decent receivers now since we are in the spot we were in. Will Hannah says, nice size, good hands, good route runner, but not a burner, but I like him. Yeah, he's definitely not a burner. So if you want to start there, he's got some Chris Brooks in his game, right, to comp him to a current Badgers receiver. He could probably run a little better than Chris Brooks, but he's a special teams guy. There's versatility. He's covering kicks. He's popping people. I like that his film shows his ability to catch away from his frame. There's a couple off target passes where Kash has to go up, go down, move his hands around to make tough catches. And then after the catch, he's physical. He runs north-south. He runs people over. There's some yak ability here. Again, this feels like a guy who might be higher floor than ceiling, but football player, running down, covering kicks, popping people, tackling people, hitting them, running hard after the catch, making out-of-frame catches with his hands and his size. Feels like maybe a possession receiver type, someone who's going to catch the ball, move the sticks, shield off defenders, post them up a little bit, get extra yards after the catch. I also think this is probably a player, and some of this was on his film. I downloaded the film, but I'm not going to put it up here just because my computer's been acting super wonky. I think the film would overtax it right now, which is wild. So I'm not going to put the film up here, but there's some really nice clips of him on film blocking, getting downfield, blocking on RPOs, blocking DBs. It feels, again, we're watching highlight film, but this feels like a good fit for the type of offense that Jeff Grimes wants to run. This feels like a good fit for the type of offense that is going to try to be physical. It's going to try to run RPOs. It's going to get people on the edges. You need receivers that can block. This feels like a guy who can block, who has good hands, good size, good physicality. He's probably just not a burner. He's probably a 4'6" guy, a 4'5" guy, 4'6" guy, something like that, which is why he's a mid 3-star player from Arizona. If he was with his hands and kind of his physical nature, if he was a burner, he'd be a 4-star guy. Chad says, sounds like an Aberderis. I don't think it's smooth as an Aberderis. I don't think he's probably quite the athlete as a Jared Aberderis, but some of the same intangible type stuff, some of the same ability to catch away from his frame. I think he has some of those things. Yeah, I agree with Tom Schneider. Aberderis had more twitch and burst. I do agree with that. This is not, I think this is a boundary receiver who's going to be able to block, who's going to be able to make some possession catches, move the sticks. I'm not sure if there's a ton more there, but that's a valuable piece, right? Maybe that's what you hope Chris Brooks can give you more of next year. But just a good physical possession receiver is a valuable piece, and you need to get bodies in that room. You desperately need to get bodies in that room. You needed 3 or 4 this cycle, so they did a good job. Coach Reed did a good job of picking up a couple extra ones, and now you still need another 4 in the portal. The question is, can any of these freshman receivers play this year? I'm curious. You guys in the chat too. Cannon says he's just a high floor, low ceiling guy, not much more than that. Yeah, I think he's a higher floor, lower ceiling guy. And I will say this, that term gets thrown around a lot as a very negative connotation. High floor is not a bad thing. Indiana is literally filled with a bunch of high floor guys. They also have some high ceiling guys. Don't get me wrong, and they're coached incredibly well. High floor guys make your team better. They're really solid players that you can count on, and they're consistent. High ceiling guys often don't hit. Now, when they hit, you get Fernando Mendoza, you get Lance Kendricks. Those are the high ceiling guys that hit. Those are the stars. High floor is not a bad thing. I just don't think he runs well enough to have the high ceiling. Tom says we haven't done well with smaller frame guys at receiver. I mean, just in general, we haven't done well with receivers in general. You're right. The bigger frame guys we've had probably more success with, the Cephases, the Tunes, the Abbeys. But let's be real. We've had no success with any type of receivers. So, yeah, that one is tough. Will Hanna says, great analysis on him, Ryan. That is exactly what I saw. Great minds think alike, Will. And so do ours. I mean, I think it's a good pickup. I think he's a nice pickup. He's a good pickup at this spot in the class. And again, quite frankly, this room just needs some depth. They need some pieces added in there. And to some degree, it's like defensive line. It's like other spots. You just stockpile a few bodies and see who pans out, see who develops. I like the pickup. Now they got to go get 4 more in the portal. Now that it's not nearly enough, but this is a nice job by Coach Reed. He's a really good recruiter. I was actually talking to somebody today who had mentioned how good of a recruiter Coach Reed is. And it was kind of unrelated to this actually, but I heard it was interesting because it was kind of an out of nowhere comment. We were having a different conversation. I was talking to somebody who would definitely know these things. And it was just like, yeah, he's a really good recruiter, really good personality, connects well with people. Really, really good guy to have on that staff. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then later on, I found out, they flipped Kash Brock. So yeah, Reed is doing a good job. He's out there grinding. I can guarantee you he's in on a couple guys this class. We're going to wrap it up there. Bunch more to talk about. I just wanted to knock these two out quick. Talk about the new running backs coach, which I like. The new receiver, which I like. Again, I don't know if either are home runs, but I like both the additions. And we're about to kick off this portal cycle. So let's get going on that one. But wanted to throw these out here quick on Wisconsin. Appreciate every single one of you guys so much. And we have a bunch more coming up on Locked On Badgers for sure.